Well, Bruce Jackson, I gotta tell you, man, Microsoft is better with you after reading this book, man. And you know what your copy of your book looks like. I know I'm holding it up, but I so enjoyed this, man. Like I felt like I was reading along. I felt like at times I was also talking back to the book, which I think it's a good book, man. If I'm talking back
Right.
to it, so, well, I get to talk to you and not talk back to the book about you. Let me just get started off, man. When you hit send to send this to the publisher, what did you think, man? Like, what came across your mind? Did you feel like you turned it all in? Did you put everything out there for us, Bruce? Or what did you end with?
I felt that I gave everything, right? One of the
Yeah.
things I decided to do early on was not to really protect myself, really to show the public what type of life I live, because my goal ultimately is to inspire, right? And
Right.
I have to be authentic, right? And so in order to do that, people have to feel that I'm telling the truth and nothing but the truth. So it's really to inspire. I think the book will inspire people in urban America. I think it will inspire people in rural America. I think it will inspire immigrants. I think it will inspire women. I think it will inspire everyone. But I think most important, I also want to make sure that we give proximity to those who are privileged. For
Yeah.
those who are privileged, if you give them proximity, hopefully it leads to empathy, and empathy will lead to support, and they
Mm.
could help us along this journey in creating a society that's equal and beneficial to all. But more importantly, I want to also encourage people like myself who went through the struggle, who feel like they should hide what they went through. And I want to inform them that their background, their struggle is the most valuable tool that we can use to inspire the next generation, because people have to see it in order to believe it, to achieve it. They have to see themselves in you.
Man, I gotta tell you, if there was one word for this book, which is hard to put one word in, so I'm gonna give two words to this book, it was authentic and empathy at the same time. Man. And of course, there are so many other words to this. I was telling my wife, I go on just how many words I thought were just great about this book. Why did you feel like you had to be so vulnerable, Bruce? Because you lay it all out there on the line, man.
I think that gives me credibility, right? I think
Yeah.
that gives me credibility to the community. And I think I want to illustrate what my life was like, because my life is like your life and many other people's lives. I'm
Mm.
just fortunate to have a platform to share it. And I think my goal, what I'm mission to do now, is just to inspire others through my experience. And I try to remind kids all the time that I remind myself of they remind me of me when I was 10 years old or 12 years old. And they should look at me as what they can become even greater later on in life. So that's the real goal.
Never far from home. What did this do for you when you were writing it? Like, writing is a very lonely practice. I think people understand that, Bruce, to be honest with you, because it's just you and the screen oftentimes, man.
Yep.
What did it do for you inwardly?
It brought back a lot of emotions, right? And it
Yeah.
was hard, right? I mean, you think about some of the struggles you went through, some of the memories. You think about, for me, my grandmother and a relationship that I had with her, and the fact that she's not here to share it with me today, what I've accomplished. And she was really the core for me being who I am today. It a lot of hurtful feelings, a lot of memories. It's
Mm.
you're just in touch with a lot of your past feelings, and it brings up a lot of emotions. So it's difficult, no question about it.
Yeah, I wondered that as I was reading it and talking back to it, and sometimes laughing at it, Bruce. I wondered, what did this do to him on the inside? Just because it was kind of one of those things where, I mean, I would tell anyone, you got to go out and get this book because it's not like you think it's going to be. Like Bruce, when they sent it to me, I thought, okay, here we go, another book on like how to. And it is not that, man. Like you feel like you're walking down memory lane here, which made me kind of wonder. I just wonder how you felt about it. And the women that helped you along the way. What would you say to the mentors of your life, man? Because you talk about them and the women that guide you through as well.
I would say thank you. I think that God placed them in my life at crucial points in my career. At every point, someone came in, even my father, who was never, he was in and out of my life. I think he came at a crucial point and stopped me from doing something that would have been a turning point in my life. And if you recall, that was actually selling the newspapers And I thought it was a legitimate business because it prevented me from selling drugs
Right.
or
Yeah.
robbing someone. So although it was still a crime, it was less of a crime than what most other people were doing during that time. But nonetheless, he came in and stopped me from doing that. So intervention, right, by my father, who wasn't really a father, played an important role. When I got a job with Arthur Anderson, the woman said, "Don't take this job. Go to law school." Intervention again, right?
Yeah.
During college, individuals saying, "Bruce, you can do it." But more importantly, if you remember, my aunt said, "Bruce," when I wanted to quit college, she said, "Bruce," I called my mother. My mother said, "Son, if you're hurting and it's that difficult, come home." My mom was just being a mom
It's
and
been a
didn't want
mom.
to
That's
son
what they do.
and didn't want to see her son go through pain. But
Yeah.
my aunt, on the other hand, I had to call her and she said, "Bruce, you coming home to what? To go back to the projects?" And I said, "I don't know." She said, "You're coming home to go back to the job working in the basement for Chase Manhattan Bank?" And I said, "I don't know." And she said, "Well, let me tell you, you can't come home because your grandmother picked cotton, didn't really stayed home. She took care of someone else's house, couldn't look white people in the face, had to say, 'Yes, ma'am,' 'No, ma'am.' Your mother picked cotton and had to do the same thing. I picked cotton, but most importantly, Bruce, no one in our family, not just your generation, that ever graduated from college. So you're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it for us and the future." And she hung up. And at that point, I thought about it and I said, "You know what? This is not about me anymore.
Yeah.
If it was about me, I would have quit."
Yeah.
It was just the past generations that struggled, that gave me the motivation and the drive and the energy to push forward and to push forward hard, and the purpose now that I had in life to inspire not just my family going forward, future
Yeah.
generations, but others. So with that sort of energy from the past and the purpose, no one could ever outwork me.
Hmm.
And they
And
couldn't understand where that energy was coming from.
the energy is real for you, as we joked about before we hit record here. You start early in the morning, man. Like, is that energy level? Does it like? How do you keep that up, Bruce? Because part of me was going, "Whoa!" I knew it from the book. You bring a lot of energy to whatever you do, and you're an achiever, man. For real, for real. How has that? Like, how do you do that, Bruce? Is that a fair question to ask, man?
It is a fair question. I think one of the things that I realized that no one's smarter than me. I always started with that premise. People
Yeah,
were just fortunate and privileged, and they had certain backgrounds,
the
right?
opportunities.
And I
Yeah,
tell people that today. No one's smarter than anyone. People
right.
just have the resources and the environment. And I said, if you take a kid out of any community, urban community, public housing, you put them in an affluent community in the neighborhood in which you live, that kid would probably do extremely well.
Yeah,
And if you take a kid out of an affluent area and put them in a public housing urban area, probably wouldn't do well because they don't have it's all about resources and environment. So I
yeah,
realized that I was starting from an area where I didn't have the resources or the environment wasn't as conducive. So I had to catch up. So there's two things that kept me going. There's a quote by Frederick Douglass: "There's no struggle, there's no progress." And that kept me going. I realized that I had to have patience with myself, right?
wow,
And give myself grace because I'm going to make mistakes in the process of trying to catch up. And then there's the Longfellow poem, which is the height by which great men reach and kept were not achieved overnight, but while their companions slept were toiling upwards during the night. And to me, that was like, you know what? I just got to outwork you. And I'm going to outwork you because the average person, I learned early on, just want to work the minimum amount of time
right,
required.
Bruce.
So if
Yeah,
it's 9 to 5,
9 to 5, and they're
5 o'clock in the evening, and if
good.
I stay to 6, I'm gonna catch you over time. And so
Wow.
that's my goal. Like, just catch people, Bruce. And my goal has always been a mission. I'm on a continued chase to catch people.
Yeah. I'm gonna turn the corner here a little bit. I'll be going to Memphis next week, and I work with a church there.
Mhm.
And the opportunities and resources, we are lagging behind in
Right.
many areas in parts of our country. Bruce, how can we do better with that? Because here we are looking at the mirror all over again.
Mhm.
It seems to happen, I think, every other month. What can we say to people who are going, how do you get out of the rut, man?
I think that's part of what I'm writing the book. What you're talking about is because I look back 50 years and I go back to visit my family and
Yeah,
still in public housing. I have a lot of family and friends still living there. And when I go back, I'm like, it's the same thing.
yeah,
Haven't things changed? And so that's a totally separate question. And we
yeah,
could have a long dialogue about the system and
yeah,
why the system hasn't really changed or provided these services for us. That's a totally different discussion. And I think at some point we have to get there.
mm,
And that's why I'm writing the book. I think it's important for us not to leave any more brilliant minds behind, another
yeah,
generation behind, and we have to try to inspire people to break through despite this situation.
yeah. Just
And that's what I'm trying to do.
in the book was so I thought was so cool about it was there is a game plan if you follow it in the book of how to
Right.
get out of the rut,
Mhm.
man. I mean, and you definitely did. And it's one of those things where like I personally walked away inspired by it, man, of just going, wow, okay, I need to get up earlier or I need to do this. And I told my a couple friends of mine about it. I said, if you have a teenager I think, Bruce, my personal opinion, every teenager should read this book, first of all, because it's one of those kind of things where it does help you understand you can do it, man. And
That's
so,
exactly it.
yeah, and to me, that just comes across the book, man. Next, last question, man. I gotta ask this question, man. When I think about this, and I have a whole host of them in my journal, man. Not just how do you get out of the rut, Bruce, but what inspired you to write the book, man? Like, what made you go, I got to do this?
Well, I'll tell you, I've been asked by entertainment clients of mine for about
Yeah,
5 years, and their philosophy was, Bruce, you should write a book because you live the story. You live our stories as entertainers, as rappers, right?
right.
And we need to teach the young people in our community that there are other choices, right? You
Mm,
don't have to be an entertainer. You don't have to be an athlete, but there are other choices. And the other choices, percentage wise, is a greater likelihood that you would succeed in other things than being an athlete and a entertainer.
yeah.
And finally, I got a call about 2 years ago from the same entertainment client. He said, Bruce, and he put me on with an agent. And the agent said, I think your story is a fantastic story, the literary agent. And I
Mm,
said, well, you know what? And he said, I think publishers would love it. I said, well, because you want to make money, because the time is right. I said, the publisher want to make money. And he paused. He said, well, what are you doing now to give your message or to tell your story? I said, well, I go to schools, I go to churches, I speak to young kids. He said, well, that's not scalable. He said, so what do you care whether or not I make money or the publisher make money if we can scale your message? And I
mm,
said, okay, you're a smart guy. I said, you're a smart guy. So I said, let me think about it. So I spoke to some close friends and family members and said, I think this is probably the time to do it. I said, there's a lot going on. And someone called me, an agent, and said, so what? We're going to make money, but we're going to create a platform for you to share the message. And I said, you know what? I don't care if they make money. In fact, all the royalties from my book, I'm donating to not-for-profit.
wow.
And I said, because I think my story is many people's story. And so the
Bruce, I
story,
got to cut you off. I'm going to say yes. It is a lot of people's story. But I think what makes your story so amazing, man, is the drive and just the force
Mhm,
that you go with life. I don't want to sound critical of what you just
right.
said, so forgive me for that. But it is everyone's our story, but there's a drive and a force here, which is why people got to read the book, that is uncanny to me, man.
No, I agree. And I think that I always say, why did I make it out? And I used to say, to be honest with you, and you know what? I was just lucky. Then I said, Bruce, I'm not lucky. I was just blessed. God
Mm,
has me here for a reason. And whenever that reason or whether my mission is satisfied, then I'm gone. But I'm still here. So presumably my mission is not over yet. So this is still part of my mission, right?
uh,
So that's how I kind of interpret what I have achieved. But I think the core of it came from the three women in my family that kept me driving and pushing forward.
I would agree, and I think it is for everyone. Every high school student should read it, but I also think every single mom should read the book too. Come from a single parent household.
Right, right.
So much hope, man. I gotta ask this question, Bruce. What's next, man? Like, you cannot write a book like this. No offense. And there not be something next. And so I'm just kind of asking, I'm being nosy. What's next?
You know what? Everyone's asking me what's next. And to me, my answer is up to God what's next. I don't know. I wrote the book and I'll see where it leads me, right? I think that I'm certainly, whatever I do is going to be community driven. That's what I want to do. But what God has store for me, I'm not sure in terms of what's next. But certainly it'll be involved with the community. Whenever I stop working at Microsoft, that will be my mission.